The snow fell in quiet sheets that night, blanketing the empty streets of the city with a cold stillness. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting pools of pale gold light on the icy sidewalks below. Most of the world was asleep, warm inside homes where fireplaces crackled and comforters softened the harsh edge of winter. But on a lonely park bench just 2 blocks from a towering penthouse, a woman curled into herself, arms tightly wrapped around her chest, her breath shallow, and her eyes closed not in peace, but in pure exhaustion. She was wearing a thin maid's uniform and a tattered coat that barely kept the cold from biting into her bones. In one hand, she clutched a slip of paper and a few folded bills, as if they were her last hope, and maybe, they were. That's how billionaire real estate mogul Daniel Whitmore found her, his maid, the woman who'd worked in his home that very morning, now sleeping alone in the freezing cold, like she belonged to a world completely different from his. And in that moment, something inside him shattered. If you believe kindness still has a place in this world, if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, then please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Corner. Your support helps spread the kind of stories that move hearts and change lives. Daniel had always considered himself a man of reason, business, and logic. He built his empire from nothing, a college dropout who turned a single apartment flip into a billion-dollar enterprise. He didn't have time for feelings, not really. But there was something about the sight of Maria, quiet, diligent Maria who'd worked for him for nearly 2 years, curled up like a ghost on that icy bench that turned every number, every profit margin, every merger he had going cold in his mind. It didn't make sense. She was always on time. She never asked for anything. Her uniform was always crisp, and her eyes kind, though always tired. She'd quietly clean his office while he took late-night calls, never interrupting, always polite. And yet here she was, without shelter, without warmth, and seemingly without anyone. He stood frozen for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall slowly, her fingers slightly purple from the cold. A gust of wind blew her hair across her face, and she didn't even flinch. He kneeled next to her, brushing snow off her shoulders gently, afraid to startle her, but even that didn't wake her. The exhaustion was too deep. The struggle too long. In her lap sat a folded eviction notice, creased from how tightly she had clutched it. Alongside it were a few crumpled bills, likely her last paycheck, untouched, unable to save her from the inevitable. Daniel carried her to his car that night, wrapping his coat around her, the same coat that had cost more than she probably earned in a month. He called his private doctor, had a room in his guest wing prepared, and stayed by her side until she awoke, disoriented, ashamed, and terrified. She begged him not to fire her. All she could say, over and over, was, "I didn't want to cause trouble. I just needed a little more time." And then the tears came, slowly at first, then sobbing as years of silent pain broke free. What Daniel learned over the next few days turned his world upside down. Maria had a daughter, Anna, just 7 years old, who was staying with a neighbor after they'd been evicted from their apartment. Her husband had passed away in a construction accident 2 years ago, leaving her to fend for herself with no family nearby and no support system. Maria had taken on 3 cleaning jobs, Daniel's was just one of them, trying desperately to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. But when Anna fell ill and required expensive medication, Maria had to choose between rent and her child's life. She chose Anna. And lost everything else. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. He had seen her dozens of times, exhausted, red-eyed, moving like a ghost through his mansion, and he'd never once asked how she was doing. Never once thought to wonder what struggles hid behind her silence. He had the power to buy skyscrapers, yet hadn't noticed the storm brewing right under his nose. But he would make it right, not as charity, not as pity, but because it was the decent, human thing to do. He moved Maria and her daughter into a small apartment owned by his company, fully paid. He hired Anna a private tutor to help her catch up on school she had missed. And he offered Maria a full-time position, not as a maid, but as an administrative assistant at his headquarters, a job she was more than qualified for, having studied accounting back in her home country before life forced her to trade spreadsheets for scrub brushes. With time, she regained confidence. Her eyes held warmth again, her spine straightened, and her laughter, shy at first, slowly returned. Anna, bright and curious, soon called Daniel Uncle Dan, drawing him pictures of houses with smiling sons and stick-figure families holding hands. But Daniel's change didn't stop there. Maria's story opened his eyes to the silent suffering of hundreds who worked for him, janitors, receptionists, security guards, all essential to the empire he had built, yet barely surviving. He launched an internal audit and created a foundation focused on employee support, housing grants, emergency funds, free childcare, and scholarships. The media caught wind of it months later when an intern anonymously shared what was happening, and headlines blared about the billionaire who quietly transformed hundreds of lives, all because of a single maid he found sleeping on a bench in the snow. Today, Maria speaks at community centers and shelters, reminding struggling single mothers that dignity is not defined by circumstance. Anna is on track to attend university, her tuition fully covered. And Daniel, once known for being ruthless and untouchable, now ends every meeting with the same question: what do our people need? Because he learned, the hard way, that sometimes those closest to us are suffering silently, and all it takes is one act of awareness to change everything. If this story touched your heart even just a little, please like, comment, and share this video so more people can experience the power of kindness, empathy, and second chances. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Kindness Corner so we can continue sharing true stories that restore faith in humanity. Folded hands comment below: have you ever helped or been helped in a moment of deep need? We'd love to read your story.